Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
Kawhi Leonard gets paid to do nothing. The Spurs' new stadium deal is going to be a disaster. StreamEast gets shut down, or does it? Plus, NFL Week 1 picks. It's all on a new episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome in to Gordon Damer on Sports. Plenty to get into on this episode. Thanks for hitting play. And as always, if you can hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening or watching on, it would really help us out. All right, we got a lot to get into today. We'll get into NFL picks for Week 1. Looking forward to that. We'll get into some NFL TV stories that have been popping up, and also the San Antonio Spurs' new arena, which looks like it's been an absolute mess. But I wanted to start today with the story in the NBA that everyone has been talking about. So Wednesday morning, Pablo Torre drops a bombshell on his podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out. He lays out in an 80-minute episode. And if you haven't heard it, you really should do yourself a favor and check it out, because what he has uncovered is wild. So the gist of it is Kawhi Leonard, LA Clippers superstar, somehow walked away with a secret $28 million endorsement deal from this company, Aspiration. Never heard of it? Well, nobody's ever heard of it. It was a complete scam. That's why you've never heard of it. But we'll get into that company in a minute. The company is going to save the planet with your credit card. That turned out to be a scam. Who would have seen that coming? Wow, what a shock. Now, why this is a story and why it's a big deal is because Aspiration wasn't just some random company. They were in business with the Clippers. They had a $330 million sponsorship deal with the team that was supposed to last until 2034. And Steve Ballmer, the billionaire owner of the Clippers, reportedly put $50 million of his own money into the thing. So this was not some distant third-party relation. This was directly tied to the Clippers organization. And where it gets good, according to Pablo's reporting, Kawhi Leonard didn't do anything for that $28 million. Nothing. No commercials, no Instagram posts, no billboards, no radio spots. There's not really a single shred of evidence that he ever mentioned them publicly, not even once. The man basically got paid $28 million to sit in silence, which for Kawhi Leonard is right on brand. And he was not the only high-profile name that was paid, but he was paid way more than everybody else, way more than all the other celebrity sponsors combined. And again, he did nothing for that money. So I've heard people say, well, this is circumstantial. I absolutely believe this happened. You do not need to be the biggest Sopranos fan in the world to know a no-show job when you see one. And this, it looks like a straight-up, under-the-table arrangement designed him to get more money and keeping it off the Clippers' salary cap and books. That is the definition of salary cap circumvention. And it's the kind of thing that Adam Silver in the past has called a cardinal sin. So let's back up for a second and talk about the company Aspiration, because if you're wondering, how did nobody else see that this was a scam coming? Well, the warning signs should have been there. Their entire company was about erasing your carbon footprint and planting trees in your behalf. That was the hook. They were going to swipe your credit card and plant a tree. Give us your money, and the earth will thank you later. Sure. So that should have been a tip-off that it was a scam, right? When a company is based on just making you feel good without actually proving anything, you would think that the warning signs should have been there. And sure enough, Aspiration eventually collapsed. They filed for bankruptcy earlier this year. And when they did, the creditor list went public. And look at that. Look whose name popped up. KL2 Aspire LLC, Kawhi Leonard's company. So suddenly there it was in black and white. Aspiration still owing Kawhi $7 million. And the craziest part is that the payments Kawhi was supposed to get were tied directly to him playing for the Clippers. Not about him wearing gear in commercials, not to him doing appearances or any social media stuff. It was tied to him being an LA Clipper. That is not an endorsement deal. That is a side salary. That is a secret stash of money funneling through the back door. I don't see any other way you could look at it. And what makes me laugh, Steve Ballmer, one of the richest men alive, Mr. Microsoft, he's a genius investor. And we're supposed to believe that he got scammed by a tree planting credit card company, a guy that's worth $150 billion. And he did not see that this was not really on the level. This is not grandma wiring $5,000 to a Nigerian prince or grandpa paying the IRS over the phone in Apple gift cards. Now, Ballmer came out and denied the story. He called it absurd. Is it absurd? I don't know. It sounds kind of plausible to me. I mean, reports about this kind of thing have been out there. Now, there have been rumors. There's been no actual documentation. But that Kawhi wanted stuff beyond his contract, we know that for a fact. The New York Times reported that back when it was his time to be free agent. So Ballmer might say that he invests in companies all the time. Did he invest $50 million in any of them and lose $50 million? Did any of those companies also pay his superstar to do absolutely nothing? Aspiration, again, was not just business partner with the Clippers. Ballmer invested in them himself. His fingerprints are all over this thing. And where it comes back to Kawhi, other people did actual endorsements for them. Doc Rivers, for example, put his face and name out there. Other celebrities did too, but Kawhi, nothing. Squat. Which is why Pablo Torre's reporting seems kind of on the money. Because for the first time, this is not just smoke. This is not just rumors. There's an actual paper trail. There's an LLC. There's a signed contract. There's a bankruptcy filing that lists Kawhi as a creditor. That's why it feels different from all the whispers we've heard over the years, the rumors, or Kawhi's uncle Dennis asking for houses and private planes behind the scenes. This isn't somebody's friend or buddy suing because they didn't get a job that they were promised. This is actual documentation. So this is not the first time something like this has happened. If you know your NBA history, you might remember the Joe Smith case. It was back in 2000 with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They tried to do something a little bit different. They were going to pay him a lowball salary for the first couple of years, get his bird rights, and then paying this whopping sum. And David Stern found out about it. And David Stern did what David Stern did. He dropped the hammer, fined him a bunch of millions of dollars, took away 5 first-round picks. He had suspensions for the front office and the owner. And Stern called it a fraud, which was exactly what it was. But that fraud was not as egregious as this fraud. This is more of a fraud if true. So here we are 25 years later, and instead of the little Minnesota Timberwolves, it's the LA Clippers with the billion-dollar owner, one of the richest owners, not just in sports, but in the world. So the question now, there's a couple of them. Is this thing more commonplace than we've been led to believe? And what is Adam Silver going to do about it? Because the thing about it is that Ballmer is supposed to be, he's not just smart. The guy's a genius. He didn't fall into his fortune. He didn't inherit his money. He made it himself. And yet here he is tied to Aspiration, this Save Your Planet with Planting Trees startup that was like Fire Festival 2.0. It was like a giant scam. So if you expect me to believe that Steve Ballmer got duped, it's kind of hard for me to believe. I find it hard to believe Steve Ballmer just lost $50 million by accident. This is a guy who can smell a scam a mile away, and he's not just going to cut a check to everybody he comes across. So this feels different. This talk was already out there about Steve Ballmer being a guy who will do anything to win. He's all about trying to bring a title, and now we have proof that something was going on. Now, do we have proof that Ballmer was in on it? No. Nobody has that yet. But I've heard that the optics are terrible. It's more than optics. You have to explain how this is not the case if you're telling me that this is absurd, as Steve Ballmer is trying to tell me. You got your superstar getting paid $28 million from a company that you're personally invested in and goes out of business because it's a complete scam. That's a trail of red flags. It looks like the opening of the Olympic Games. And if you followed Kawhi Leonard's career at all, none of this really should be that much of a shock. The whole Uncle Dennis saga, there were reports about him wanting private planes and houses and under-the-table perks whenever Kawhi hit free agency. And lo and behold, look at that. All these years later, it turns out that these stories might have some evidence. So again, this is different. This is not a rumor. This is not anonymous sources. This is paperwork. This is bankruptcy file. This is signed agreements. It's right there in the documents. It's not speculation. And it's not just the paperwork either. The Clippers already had kind of a shady reputation of dealing with Kawhi when he became a free agent. There were accusations that the Clippers were bending the rules to land him and making promises they couldn't officially make. And then look at this. Lo and behold, this aspiration deal looks an awful lot like what people were suspecting back then. So now Adam Silver's boxed in. He's on record as calling this type of thing a cardinal sin. So what does he do? Does he investigate the Clippers? Is it more commonplace? Because these type of rumors have been out there before. And are the Clippers just the ones that got caught? Because they got caught in this, not because of some NBA investigation, not because the league office was on top of it and announced it to the media. We found out about this because a podcast host dug it up and did the work. The league did not discover this, and this was basically handed to them. And they said that they investigated this and found nothing. So either they didn't want to find anything, or they weren't capable of finding anything back then. And neither option really makes the league look good. And this, if this is true, this calls into question the integrity of the league. So Adam Silver can't shrug it off again, because if he does, then it's open season for the richest owners in the sport to just funnel money however they want. And all these owners are loaded now. Every one of these teams is worth billions of dollars. And the guy who's worth $130 billion, if you just shrug it off, is going to think the rules don't apply to him, because most things in life, they probably don't. And I have to believe that the NBA at some level does care about this stuff. I can tell you this. If the Knicks had done this, I would be confident that the league would be cracking down I would be waiting for a press conference any moment. If James Dolan was secretly funneling money to any one of his, I don't even want to say the name, because there's been some reports out there that someone on the Knicks might have taken less money to stay with the team. I don't want to say it. But you know that the hammer would be dropped. And the funny thing is that Ballmer has spent years since taking over the team as being the new Clippers, right? The clean, respectable, cutting-edge franchise, does things the right way. And it looks like, until proven otherwise, that he might have been doing something that's straight out of a Donald Sterling playbook. Well, maybe not Donald Sterling, because he was notoriously cheap. But it's almost poetic that the guy who brought in the Clippers to scrub away the past scandals might have a scandal on his hands that really does call into question the integrity of the league. Again, if you're funding companies to funnel money to a player. So let's get back to Adam Silver, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. If the evidence shows that the Clippers are running this side payroll through aspiration, well, then Adam Silver has to drop the hammer. And I've heard in other cases, David Stern, he didn't care about Minnesota. He nuked them into orbit. He did everything that basically he could. And he said at the time, you can't play games with the salary cap. Now, Adam Silver, is he going to do that? Is he going to slap fines and strip draft picks from Steve Ballmer, the richest owner in the league? And would that do anything, even if he did? Because let's be honest, Silver has been way softer on discipline than Stern ever was. Stern was judge, jury, and execution. I think he looked forward to it. He liked to rule with an iron fist. Adam Silver's not that guy. He's like a consensus builder. He wants harmony. So I think if he had his choice, he would be more likely to smooth things over than go scorched earth. But I don't think that this is something you can smooth over. This is in black and white. And either the Clippers funneled money to Kawhi Leonard off the books so they didn't have to pay him on the salary cap, or they didn't. And you can't just slap a $5 million fine and call it a day and then not explain it. You have to make it hurt. And really, if you're being honest, you would have to kick the guy out of the league. But that's not going to happen. These leagues, as I've said before, are businesses. And no business is going to kick out a guy who is worth $150, $130 billion. So I keep seeing people say that Steve Ballmer strongly denied the allegations. Problem is, the allegations have been out there for a while. Now, they haven't been allegations. They've been rumors. There's been speculation. The talk, though, it goes back to when Leonard signed with the Clippers. The reporting back then was his Uncle Dennis wanted ownership of the team, a private plane that would be available at all times, a house, a guaranteed amount of off-the-court endorsement money. The New York Times reported that back then, that there were requests to genie bust of the Lakers over several days. And it's not just the paperwork either, because Pablo Terry has the whistleblower on the record as saying the endorsement deal was specifically made so they could skirt the salary cap. If it walks like a duck and talks like, you can deny it. I think you have to give me some evidence that shows that it's not true. So if you just go back to the timeline, you tell me if I'm crazy. Kawhi signs a 3-year extension with the Clippers. Same year, an LLC tied to Kawhi Leonard, boop, pops up. Oh, in the very same moment, the Clippers inked this massive sponsorship with Aspiration. And this wasn't just the run-of-the-mill logo on the court, you never really think. No, this deal came with a contract for Leonard himself, and that gave him the option to do nothing. It's a good deal if you can get it. Hey, how would you like to make $28 million and not have to do a single thing? There's a couple of guys in the NBA who probably feel like they really missed out on this. Ben Simmons has got to be livid over this. And the deal also, I believe, had a kicker clause that terminated if he ever left the Clippers. I mean, what are we talking? You don't need to be a CBA lawyer to see the smoke here. That is not a sponsorship. That is a stay on Steve Ballmer's payroll forever bonus. You have to give me some evidence. You know, both sides are trying to win me over on this, and one side has done a whole lot more than the other. So Kawhi Leonard's deal also, I mean, the other people who got deals with this company are not small-name people. Drake, Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert Downey Jr., and all of them, he got more than all of them in money, in stock, in everything. Because he's simply Kawhi Leonard or because he's Kawhi Leonard on the Clippers? And then even when the company was circling the drain and laying off people left and right and losing investors, the one corporate priority was to keep cutting checks to Kawhi Leonard. Because the relationship with Steve Ballmer mattered more than the actual viability of the business. And the one former Aspiration employee flat out told Pablo Torre that when people questioned why Kawhi's contract was the way it was, the response was, and I'm quoting here, "Don't ask, it's to circumvent the salary cap, LOL." Yes, LOL indeed. So that's not some random person on the internet. This is not internet conspiracies. That's an actual employee who was in the room who said it was to circumvent the NBA salary cap. So you can't dance around this. This is not a gray area. It's not a coincidence. You know, maybe it could be another way if you... No, this money was funneled to Kawhi Leonard, attached to his tenure as a Clipper, and structured in a way that would look like a salary cap workaround. And unless Adam Silver is willing to suddenly redefine what circumvention means in terms of the salary cap, I don't see how you can look at this as anything else. And to think that you really can't have high hopes that anything's going to come out of this because the NBA already investigated once. Boy, that investigation must have been really a deep dive, huh? Got scooped by a podcast host who did an amazing job with this. But it's all right there. And it's been out there for a while. So the whole thing, if Kawhi's camp was asking for these kind of side perks back in 2019, and then shocker, he picked the Clippers, and then all of a sudden it turns out, he's got this deal, this endorsement deal for $7 million a year. And you'd have to wonder, is this the only one? Is this the only kind of deal that he's got? I mean, maybe he's got more. I mean, after all, if you caught Al Capone with a shoebox full of cash, you wouldn't think to yourself, well, we got the whole operation. So I'll wait to see what the NBA does with its relaunched investigation. The fact that they've got to relaunch it is not exactly good. You know, you can forgive me if I'm not holding my breath that anything's going to come out of this. And really what it comes down to here, what are they going to do to Steve Ballmer? They're not kicking him out of the league, and that's the only thing that would really hurt him. You can't fine him. Again, he's worth $150 billion. He built the Clippers' new Intuit Dome or whatever they're calling it for $2 billion of his own money. There's no taxpayer money. There's no city council vote. And the arena is set to host the All-Star game in February. So maybe they take that away from, I don't know. Like, unless Adam Silver gets really brave, let's say he really, cracks down, slaps Steve Ballmer with a $50 million fine. $50 million, it will never be that. But even if it was, what's that going to do to a guy worth $150 billion? Well, they'll strip draft picks. They don't have any draft picks until, 2030? You're going to take away the 2031 pick? Well, that'll really teach them. I mean, think about the levels of this. To bring in a company, to pay the company, to pay. The punishment cannot possibly fit the crime here. That's really what you come away from it. If this was truly the salary cap circumvention, flat out funneling money, an extra $7 million under a phony sponsorship, I don't really see what you can do to a guy like Steve Ballmer that will actually make it sting and actually be a message to it's almost like they're too big to fail. There's nothing you can do. They're just too rich. So the NBA, they've already done an investigation once. I find it hard to believe anything's going to come out of this, but something almost has to come out of this because it's such a big story. So when the league finally sits down and asks, what do we do now? I think they're going to realize the ugly truth. There is no punishment that stings Steve Ballmer. You can't fine him into compliance. You can't strip away enough draft picks. And what's to make you believe? I mean, he's still relatively a young guy. What's to make you think he's not going to do something next time even more devious? All right, let's talk San Antonio, because when you think that the NBA drama can't get any crazier with Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, along comes Project Marvel. That is the Spurs' $1.4 billion downtown arena and entertainment project. And boy, it looks like a mess. Now, first off, the politics here are kind of strange. You've got the Spurs, you've got Peter Holt, the owner, you've got the city, you've got the county, and the mayor of San Antonio, Gina Ortiz-Jones, doing this weird kind of dance. Now, the mayor, she's not saying no to the project, but she's basically saying, wait a sec, let's get an independent economic study to see how this is going to impact us favorably. Because all the numbers of the Spurs are showing are from a company that, look at that, just so happens to have ties to the Spurs. So they're a little bit biased. And then the public actually seems to be on her side. So nobody really trusts the projections. And honestly, given how these things usually go, who could blame them? So the plan, as simple terms as you can make it, is the Spurs are willing to put in $500 million, and they would cover the cost of overruns, which sounds generous, I guess, but that's barely half the total. That's not even half the total. You have the county, they would kick in $311 million, but only if voters approve a venue tax increase in November. And then you have the city of San Antonio pitching in $489 million through bonds that would be paid back with a mix of Spurs rent and private developer leases and a couple other things, some state and hotel taxes. But don't forget, the city also has to buy the land. That's $60 million. And they have to pay for infrastructure upgrades downtown. That could be around $250 million. Then add in future police and fire costs once the arena opens. So the city's contribution is looking way more than it's more than $500 million. Now the Spurs, they're kicking off their PR push with the Win Together campaign, which fans will get free food, free parking, all the bells and whistles, and they want you to vote yes on the propositions. Vote A and B, one for the facility upgrades and another one for a hotel tax increase. So they're trying to make it fun and hope that with those hot dogs and that free parking, nobody actually thinks about the actual numbers, because the kicker, all that tax money is not free. The city's contributions come from redirecting property tax growth in the other areas and fancy sounding zones. Like the taxes that would normally go to fund the police and the fire and the schools, the stuff that the city actually needs and is supposed to be doing, would be getting funneled into the arena, into the sports team. And the county money, car rental taxes and hotel tax, yeah, that's great. How many people are really going to San Antonio to see the new arena? Like you're going to a vacation to see San Antonio because of a new arena? I don't think there's enough to make that up. So over $750 million in public funds is going to Spurs ownership with no guarantee that the city or the county would ever see a return. And let's be honest, given the other times we've seen this movie before, arenas rarely create the promised economic boom. Sometimes it takes decades to see anything in return. And most of the time, the only people that benefit are the sports teams themselves. So Holt's PR strategy about look at the amazing downtown development, half the media, it seems like they're, oh, don't worry, this isn't taxpayer funded. And the other half is saying, well, if they don't get it, the Spurs might leave town. Now, the team doesn't really have another option lined up. This is like a leverage play. And he doesn't really even need to. Holt doesn't even need to threaten to leave because he just needs to know that the threat works, right? We don't get this arena, oh well. But the real kicker is the mayor and the public and the critics kind of are asking the right questions. And it's basically vote yes or the Spurs might leave. That's what the reporting seems to be. There's no deep dive into whether or not the arena will actually help the economy or whether the taxpayers are going to pay for decades or basically subsidize an arena for a billionaire owner. So, a lot of times it's presented to these cities that the new arena, instant economic boom. And it rarely works out that way. There's some jobs, maybe there's some tax revenue. But again, the main people that benefit are not the taxpayers. They're not the voting public. It's the team who is getting the money. So when if you see, because I think it's going to get more and more play now, this Spurs new arena downtown in a few years, remember, it might look like a win for the city, and I'm sure it'll be presented that way in NBA circles, but in reality, it's a calculated gamble with $750 million of public money on the line, and the odds are stacked in the favor of the billionaire owner. And that's not community investment in any way. And if this were the first time that these arguments were being presented, it might be one thing, but it's just the latest time, and we've seen them be proven time and time again. All right, let's get to NFL picks for this week. Week 1 in the NFL, and we will start with the Giants and the Commanders. Giants are getting 5.5 points. Well, I've been on record when we talked about the 10 big predictions, bold predictions for the year. I think the Commanders are more likely to take a step back this season. Older team, last year super healthy, had a bunch of miracle wins. And look, it's not unusual for teams to have that little bit of a step back. And the Giants, this is a make it or break it year. Now, the Commanders did beat a bunch of bad quarterbacks last year, and Russell Wilson is one of those quarterbacks. But this game, the more I think about it, it feels like a must-win for the Giants. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but if they don't win this game, they're really staring 0-3 in the face, right? They've got the Cowboys next week, followed by the Chiefs and the Chargers. They get the Eagles week 6. This is a huge game right out of the box, and usually the Commanders are the one team that the Giants beat. So if they start 0-3, all the stories are going to start to circulate about the Giants and looking for a new coach and a new GM and getting Jackson Dart in there. So give me the Giants and give me the 5.5 points. And plus, a division game, it's going to be close. Second game, Dolphins-Colts. Dolphins plus 1.5. If the Dolphins don't win this game, if they are completely cooked. Now, they'll be cooked at some point this year. They're going to be terrible. And Tua's going to get hurt. But he's healthy right now. And when he's healthy, they're generally pretty good. And what do the Colts have? Daniel Jones at quarterback? Oh, my God. If the Dolphins lose to them, I'll be absolutely sick. Then the third game, I'm going Raiders plus 2.5 at the Patriots. I know everybody loves the Patriots this year. Drake May's going to take this. Vrabel's going to be amazing. The Patriots are back. Let's slow down. I don't think the Raiders are going to be great, but I think that they will be a functioning team. And when you make the deal to go get Pete Carroll as your head coach, you got to be good right away. They put some pieces. They got a quarterback. They got a running game. They got a little bit of a defense. I would be surprised if they're not competitive in this game. And I'm not ready to crown the Patriots as being back just yet because Drake May had a couple of games late last season. Pete Carroll, in his 3 previous first game coaching in the NFL, has gone 3-0. I think he picks up a win here as well. So give me the Raiders plus the 2.5.
Oh, remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call Why Refi today.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not done so already, please hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. Rate the episode, share the episode with a friend. It really does help out. And we'll be back next week. After week 1 in the NFL, we'll have so much to discuss, and we'll do it right here on Gordon Damer on Sports.